Morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Christian Latta, and welcome to the January 22nd, 2026 CBA meeting. And also, I would like to give a warm welcome to our new member, Abigail Zelensky, Esquire. Thank you for being here. And we'll talk more about that shortly. The CBA welcomes and encourages public participation throughout the meeting. Members of the public have an opportunity to provide comment in person or via WebEx online. Instructions on how to make a public comment will be provided whenever a comment period is open. You will be allotted up to 5 minutes for public comment. I will now turn the meeting over to Ms. Reed to establish a quorum.
Member Aguilera,
Present.
Member Batchelor,
Here.
Member Corrigan,
Betsy Corrigan, present.
Member Dong,
Present.
Member Hines, Member Latta,
Present.
Member Lynn,
Here.
Member Rayful,
Here.
Member Thompson,
Here.
Member Two, and Member Zelensky. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. The CBA's mission is to protect consumers by ensuring only qualified licensees practice public accountancy in accordance with the established professional standards. This mission is derived from the statutory requirement that protection of the public shall be the highest priority for the California Board of Accountancy in exercising its licensing, regulatory, and disciplinary functions. Whenever the protection of the public is inconsistent with other interests sought to be promoted, the protection of the public shall be paramount. All right, so let's move on, starting with our first agenda item, which is public comments for items not on the agenda. Are there any public comments on item 1 here in Sacramento? Seeing none, moderator, please open WebEx for public comment on agenda item 1.
Thank you. If anyone would like to make a comment on an item that's not already on the agenda, you may look for the hand icon, typically at the bottom of your WebEx screen. If you're on a mobile device, that hand icon might be behind the 3-dot other options. After you've clicked that to raise your hand, we'll go in order. Each speaker will have 5 minutes with a 30-second warning. Any comments on items not on the agenda? I do not see any raised hands. I'll turn the meeting back to you, Chair.
Thank you, moderator. So we will now move on to agenda item number 2, report of the president. And we'll start with item 2A first, which is our introduction of our newly appointed California Board of Accountancy member, Abigail Zelensky, Esquire. I'm pleased to welcome Abigail Zelensky. Ms. Zelensky was appointed by the Speaker of the Assembly on December 22nd. Ms. Zelensky is an attorney and the principal of Zelensky Law, PC. She is the chair and longest serving commissioner of the Los Angeles Civil Rights Commission and serves on the advisory group of the Assembly Select Committee on Asia, California Trade and Investment, and sits on the board of the Search to Involve Filipino Americans. Ms. Zelensky was past president and chair of the Philippine American Bar Association and on the board of directors of the UCLA School of Law Alumni Association and the Asian Pacific American Bar Association. She has also previously served on the boards of various community organizations, including the Filipino American Library and Filipino American Heritage Institute. Please join me in welcoming Abigail Zelensky to the California Board of Accountancy. Thank you. Okay, since we don't have any action on these items, I will continue through the remaining items on agenda item 2, and we will take comments at the end of these items. So moving on to item 2B, report of the Leadership Roundtable meeting regarding California Board of Accountancy activities for 2026. The Leadership Roundtable meeting was held yesterday, January 21st. The meeting provided our leadership. Sorry about that. provided our leadership an opportunity to meet with Executive Officer Dominic Franzella and his executive team. We spent time discussing priority projects for 2026. A few of those projects include implementation of Assembly Bill 1175, which was signed by the governor on October 3rd. Staff are presently working on the regulations, which will be followed by the opening the application process for degree and certificate recognition. Outreach on the changes has been ongoing and will continue throughout 2026 and beyond. Staff were also directed to continue monitoring artificial intelligence and how it intersects with the regulation of the accounting profession and the CBA's consumer protection mandate. Future presentations will be conducted on AI, and staff will continue to monitor AI as it evolves and as legislative changes are proposed. CBA member per diem changes will be proposed during the March meeting during the presentation of the 2026 CBA Guidelines and Procedures Manual. We will continue work on the business modernization project. We have moved our modernization projects forward with the implementation of credit card payments for examination and the transition to CE self-certification. Staff are now working to create a new online platform for examination applicants that will build on the current CBA Connect system used for license renewal. We also discussed the CBA's positive fiscal health status and directed staff to begin research on 2 items. The first is to discuss the assessment of credit card processing fees, and the second is exploring whether any changes are needed for the initial and repeat examination application fees following the implementation of credit card payments. Both of these items will be presented to the CBA this coming year. We also directed staff to work on inviting AICPA and NASBA representatives to provide a presentation regarding statistical information related to the CPA examination. Questions on the CPA exam statistics, trends, and outcomes have been raised recently, and a presentation will be focused on addressing those questions. Additionally, the leadership team requested staff to work on partnerships and outreach activities to focus on assisting candidates in how to obtain accounting experience for CPA licensure. Staff were directed to continue working on continuing education modernization activities. The CE work group has been meeting with staff on proposed changes that can be done via a regulatory proposal, which would be presented this year. A second phase of this project will be exploring the required subjects. This would be exposed to stakeholders and then presented to the CE work group and subsequently the full board with recommendations on the number of hours of CE. Changes in the overall number of CE hours may require a legislative change. We will continue to build on all the success we have had with our outreach activities. There is a new 2026 outreach plan that we will review and approve today that will provide the foundation for 2026. We had a very productive discussion, and I would like to thank my fellow leaders for their support. 2026 will be a great year. Additionally, I would like to ask Vice President Aguilera and Secretary Treasurer Batchelor if there's any additional comments they would like to add to the Leadership Roundtable meeting we had yesterday.
I have no comments, but I do have a statement about it. I wanted to express my appreciation to the CBA staff for the preparation and the agenda and the topics that we did discuss. It was very, very helpful and enlightening in terms of our charting our course for this year. And I just wanted to just say thanks.
I echo Ms. Batchelor's comments about the staff preparation, and I enjoyed what was really a free-flowing conversation about several topics, and it was a good opportunity to increase my education. It continues, and to have some interaction with the executive team. So thank you, Mr. Franzella, for doing that for us.
Are there any additional board member comments at this time? Ms. Tu.
Thank you. Did we add the subject matter of changing the level of the officer, executive officer, into the this year's goal?
That's not something we discussed yesterday, but it was on my list to circle back with the executive team about that, if we can add that.
Yeah, that's a topic that I've been discussing with DCA OHR, so that's on our list as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pierce. And well, since I started taking comments on this item, I guess I should continue. Or can I move on and, okay. Okay, great. All right, so we will move on to agenda item 2C, which is our discussion regarding the California Board of Accountancy's 125th anniversary, including a legislative resolution and other planned activities. I'm excited to announce that Cal CPA worked with us on a Senate resolution to recognize the CBA's 125th anniversary. The resolution, which is provided in your hand carry folder, was introduced last week by Senator and CPA Roger Niello. The resolution recognizes both the regulatory oversight and practice aspects of the accounting profession. It is a blend of the CBA and its consumer protection mandate and the CPA profession and their contribution to consumers. The resolution is tentatively scheduled to be formally presented during the Senate floor session on February 2nd and will have representatives from Cal CPA in addition to myself and Executive Officer Franzella present. Once this date is finalized, staff will send information on how to watch this momentous occasion. As stated in the resolution, the CBA was created by statute in March 1901, and we are still going strong today and will continue in the future. The resolution is only one of the activities that is planned for this year. I will be including additional information on this during my first President's Report in February issue of the CBA's Update newsletter, but one of the initial items was creating a special 125th anniversary CBA logo, which is included on a couple of the agenda items. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Jason Fox and Cal CPA for all their hard work and also recognize Senator Roger Niello for introducing this resolution and for his ongoing support of the accounting profession. All right. We will continue on to agenda item 2D, which is the announcement of the new committee and liaison assignments. This is a written report only, so we won't be discussing the item, but I will take some comments at the end if there are any. Next, we will move on to agenda item 2E, which is our Department of Consumer Affairs Director's Report on Departmental Activities, which will be presented by Arthur Babakanyan, Supervisor, Department of Consumer Affairs, Organizational Improvement Office via WebEx.
And Arthur, you do have the ability to unmute yourself, and if you choose, you have the ability to turn your camera on as well. And I have not heard your voice yet. Oh, there you are. Perfect.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, we can hear you. Please proceed.
Okay, so my name is Arthur Babakanyan of the California Department of Consumer Affairs, and thank you for the opportunity to join you today. I have a couple of items to share. First one is DCA Executive Team Update. We are excited to announce that Chief Deputy Director Christine Lally has been named the Acting Director of the Department of Consumer Affairs. She enters this role following the retirement of DCA Director Kimberly Kirchmeier. Director Lally brings extensive experience to the position, having served in multiple leadership roles with the department since 2013. She will lead DCA in this position until a director is formally appointed by the governor's office. The DCA Executive Office would like to thank the board and staff for their hard work and partnership last year. We are excited about 2026 and the many opportunities that wait us. So next item is governor's activities, State of the State address. On January 8, Governor Newsom delivered his final State of the State address, reaffirming California's role as a national beacon for democracy and an economic engine with conscience, pushing back against federal overreach while boldly investing in jobs, education, affordability, climate action, and recovery from the Los Angeles wildfires. Next item, proposed 2026-2027 budget release. The governor's proposed budget is balanced for the upcoming fiscal year, reflecting a surge in state revenues, forecasting more than $42 billion higher than projected at last year's enacted budget. The budget does not include new significant spending proposals. Instead, it builds on prior policy successes and continues to implement critical investments in priorities such as education, affordability, small businesses, wildfire mitigation, and more. Okay, moving on to LA fires. This month marks 1 year since the devastating firestorms that swept through Los Angeles County. California remains committed to helping survivors recover with an all-of-government approach building on efforts that have accelerated recovery and supported communities. On this anniversary, DCA 2 reaffirms its commitment to support survivors and helping the community heal. Okay, and then moving on to renewal fee postponement. Governor Newsom took action to assist licensees affected by the Los Angeles fires and swiftly issued an executive order to allow a 1-year postponement of renewal fees for survivors impacted by the fires that were due for renewal between January and June 2025. DCA begins sending notices this month to licensees who renewed their license in 2025 and chose this postponement option with a reminder about the 1-year postponement and renewal fee due dates. Licensees with license types in the Breeze system can pay these renewal fees through their online account. All licensees with license types not in the Breeze system may submit their payment via mail. Okay, moving on to the governor's reorganization plan. Last year, Governor Newsom released his proposed 2025-26 state budget, which included a proposal to split DCA's oversight agency, the Business Consumer Services, and the Housing Agency into 2 state agencies, the California Housing and Homelessness Agency and the Business and Consumer Services Agency. After public hearings and the review by the Little Hoover Commission and the legislature, the governor's reorganization plan was enacted on July 5th, 2025. The new Business and Consumer Services Agency will be responsible for consumer affairs, licensing and enforcement, and the Department of Consumer Affairs will be among the 8 departments in this new agency. The 2 new agencies will officially become operative on July 1st, 2026. DCA continues to participate in multiple agency work groups on the logistics required to transition to the new agency and will continue to keep board and bureau leadership appraised throughout the months ahead. And then regarding travel reminders, to best serve the public, it is incumbent upon all of us to ensure that we are being fiscally prudent in our decisions, especially when traveling for board business. DCA would like to remind members and staff to evaluate if a rental car is always necessary versus ride-sharing services. Carpooling is also highly encouraged when renting vehicles. We know that there may be new travel costs board members are experiencing as well, such as baggage charges, so please keep receipt to ensure that you can be reimbursed. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to member relations at dca.ca.gov so we may assist you. And then, next item, it's the Form 700 Statement of Economic Interests. As we kick off the new year, DCA also wanted to provide a reminder about the Form 700 Statement of Economic Interests filing. These forms must be filed within 30 days of assuming or leaving your appointment and annually by April 1st. This year's annual filing period covers the prior calendar year, January 1st, 2025 through December 31st, 2025. The deadline for filing is Wednesday, April 1st, 2026. To ensure compliance, DCA requests that Form 700 filers complete the e-filing by Friday, March 20th, 2026. DCA board members must file Form 700s through the FPPC's online portal. Paper filings will not be accepted. You should have received an email from FPPC with instructions on how to file your annual Form 700. If you have any questions, please contact Board and Bureau Relations at memberrelations@dca.ca.gov. And then note, Bureau advisors and committee and council members are not required to file a Form 700 unless otherwise noted. And then a couple of items on training. Unconscious bias training. DCA training unit has developed unconscious bias training specifically for board members. This training will be added to members' LMS accounts by January 30th and incorporated into the onboarding process for all newly appointed board members. And then president's training that's held February 24, 2026. So DCA's annual President's Training will be taking place on February 24, 2026 from 10 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. This virtual training is for board presidents, vice presidents, and Bureau Advisory Committee chairs and vice chairs. The virtual training serves as a forum to share best practices for proceeding over a board or advisory committee. Please register online using DCA's Learning Management System, or LMS. And then lastly, board member orientation, or BMOT. So member orientation, or BMOT, is an all-day virtual training that DCA will offer on April 1st, June 24th, and October 21st. This training must be completed by board members within 1 year of appointment and reappointment to board. Please register for the first available date to be in compliance. Board members can register for BMOT using DCA's Learning Management System. If you have any questions or need assistance accessing these mandated trainings, please contact us at boardmemberrelations@dca.ca.gov. And thank you for dedicating services to protecting California's consumers every day. I appreciate your time. And at this time, if you have any questions, I'll be free to answer them.
Thank you for your presentation. That was very informative. Okay, so I will now be taking any board member comments or questions on agenda items 2A through 2E, if there are any. Seeing none, are there any public comments in Sacramento on these agenda items? Seeing none, moderator, please open WebEx for public comment on agenda items 2A through E.
At this time, we have no attendees signed in through WebEx, so I can turn the meeting back to you.
Okay, thank you, moderator. So we can move on to agenda item 3, the report of the Vice President. So I will now turn it over to Vice President Doug Aguilera, CPA. Thank you.
Thank you, President Lotta. The first item is item 3A. It's a reappointment to the Enforcement Advisory Committee. This item is to recommend the reappointment of Ben C. Town, CPA, to the Enforcement Advisory Committee. The Enforcement Advisory Committee assists the CBA in an advisory capacity with enforcement activities. This includes reviewing closed investigation files, providing technical guidance on open investigations, and participating in investigative hearings. I have conferred with the CBA executive officer to verify that Ben C. Town, CPA, has met the appropriate requirements for licensure renewal and has demonstrated the skills and knowledge to continue to serve as a member of the Enforcement Advisory Committee. I would like to make a motion to reappoint Ben C. Town, CPA, to the Enforcement Advisory Committee effective through January 31st, 2028. And I will now turn it back to President Lotta for a second.
Thank you, Vice President Aguilera. Do I have a second? Ms. Chu?
I would like to second that motion.
Thank you. Are there any additional comments on the motion? Seeing none, are there any public comments here in Sacramento on agenda item 3A? Seeing none, moderator, is there anyone logged in for public comment?
The only person we have is a DCA observer.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Reed, can you please take the vote?
Member Aguilera,
Yes.
Member Batchelor,
Yes.
Member Corrigan,
Yes.
Member Dong,
Yes.
Member Hines,
Yes.
Member Lotta,
Yes.
Member Lynn,
Yes.
Member Rayful.
Yes.
Member Thompson,
Yes.
Member Tu,
Yes.
and Member Zelensky. The motion carries.
Thank you. Mr. Vice President, please continue with agenda item 3B.
Thank you, President Lotta. There are no recommendations for appointment or reappointment to the Peer Review Oversight Committee, but there is a recommendation to appoint Michael L. Williams to the Qualification Committee. And this item is to recommend Mr. Williams, to the Qualifications Committee. The Qualifications Committee assists the CBA in its licensure activities by reviewing the experience of applicants for licensure and making recommendations to the CBA. This includes conducting work paper reviews with the applicant or the employer present to verify that the responses provided are reflective of the requisite experience for licensure. I have conferred with the CBA Executive Officer to verify that Michael L. Williams, CPA, has met the appropriate requirements for license renewal and has demonstrated the skills and knowledge to serve as a member on the Qualifications Committee. Mr. Williams has previously served 2 8-year terms on the Qualifications Committee, including serving as Chair and Vice Chair, and is current member of the Enforcement Advisory Committee. I would like to make a motion to appoint Michael L. Williams, CPA, to the Qualifications Committee effective through January 31st, 2028. And I will now turn it back to President Lotta to ask for a second.
Thank you. Ms. Corrigan.
Second that motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any additional board member comments or questions?
Just
Mr.
a
Rayful?
really quick question. I see he lives in Arizona, but is he licensed in California?
Yes, he has a license in California, but he also
Great.
has an office and
Thanks.
is in California.
Any additional board member comments or questions? Seeing none, any public comments here in Sacramento on agenda item 3C? Seeing none, moderator, are there any public comments for item 3C?
We do not have any members of the public logged in.
Thank you. Ms. Reed, please take the vote.
Member Hines,
Yes.
Member Lotta,
Yes.
Member Lynn,
Yes.
Member Rayful,
Yes.
Member Thompson, Member 2,
Yes.
Member Zelensky,
Yes.
Member Aguilera,
Yes.
Member Bachelor,
Yes.
Member Corrigan,
Yes.
and Member Dong.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. We will now be moving on to agenda item 4, so I will be turning it over to our Secretary Treasurer, Patricia Bachelor, for her report.
Thank you, President Lotta. This agenda item is the governor's budget for fiscal year 2026 through 2027. The governor's proposed budget was released on January 9th, 2026. The CBA's proposed budget for fiscal year 2026 to 2027 is $19,603,000. The process for the legislature to review the governor's proposed budget will continue through June 15th, 2026, which is the state's constitutional deadline for the legislature to approve the Budget Act and submit it to the governor for approval. Once the governor approves the budget, it becomes effective July 1st, 2026. Information on the CBA's approved budget for fiscal year 2026 through 2027 will be provided at the July 2026 CBA meeting. The CBA's mid-year financial report will be presented at the March meeting. That concludes my report. I will turn it back to the President, President Lotta.
Thank you, Secretary Treasurer Bachelor. Do I have any board member comments or question on the Secretary Treasurer's report? Seeing none, do we have any public comments in Sacramento? Seeing none, moderator, please open WebEx for public comment.
And we do have one public member. So if anyone would like to make a comment on the report, you may look for the hand icon, typically at the bottom of your WebEx screen. If you're on a mobile device, that hand icon might be behind the 3-dot other options. And each speaker will have 5 minutes with a 30-second warning. Any comments on this agenda item? Thank you very much. I do not see any requests. I'll turn the meeting back to you.
Thank you, moderator. All right, so we will be moving on to agenda item 5, the report of the executive officer. Our first item will be the administrative activity report, item A, presented by Christy Abate, manager for the administration unit.
Good morning, President Lara and members of the board. My name is Christy Abake, and I am the manager of the Administration Services Unit. I have a brief update to share with you today, starting with an update about the CBA office activities. On December 11th, Executive Order Officer Dominic Franzella held the third all-staff meeting of 2025. Staff heard highlights from a successful year and updates on each division's accomplishments. Leadership emphasized how every employee's work supports the CBA's consumer protection mission and expressed appreciation for staff contributions. Next, the CBA has updated its workforce and succession plan through 2027. The revised plan strengthens leadership transition planning, clarifies supervisory structures, and now includes succession planning for IT staff. The plan emphasizes cross-training, knowledge transfer, and leadership development to ensure continuity with the CBA and prepare as future leaders. I'd also like to highlight the emergency response team. Administrative support analyst Ben Lamb serves as the primary emergency response coordinator, overseeing emergency planning, training, and response activities to ensure regulatory compliance and staff safety. The emergency response team meets quarterly and plays a critical role in maintaining preparedness and operational continuity. They also help ensure that when an emergency does occur, our response presents as calm and coordinated. Now let's shift into business modernization. In December, the CBA formally launched a new credit card payment option for CPA exam applicants, following a successful launch right before Thanksgiving. This marks a major milestone. The exam application process is now fully online, delivering a faster, more convenient experience for our applicants. The rollout has been highly successful. Since launch, the system has already processed roughly 3,000 credit card transactions, illustrating that this initiative is producing measurable improvements in the application process. Finally, beginning in early January, the CBA implemented a new CE self-certification process along with an expanded CE audit program. Under this updated approach, licensees are no longer required to submit a full list of completed CE courses. Instead, the CBA has increased the number of CE audits and adopted a more risk-based audit model to strengthen compliance and enhance consumer protection. Licensees are being notified of these changes through the CBA website, social media, newsletters, and email communications. That concludes my presentation on this agenda item. I'll now turn it back over to President Lara, and I'm happy to answer any questions the members may have.
Thank you, Ms. Abate. Are there any member questions on this item? Ms. Tu.
Not so much a question, more of a comment. I noticed that the staffing level, that's the lowest I've seen in a few years. So is that really good news, I assuming?
Yes, we've been readjusting some duty statements and filling some vacancies that have existed for a bit. So I agree, this is the lowest it's been for a while. So very positive.
Thank you. Any other member comments or questions? Seeing none, any public comments here in Sacramento on agenda item 5A? Seeing none, moderator, please open WebEx for public comment on the administrative activity report.
This is the moderator. If anyone would like to make a comment, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. Each speaker will have 5 minutes with a 30-second warning. Any comments on the report? I do not see any requests for comment. I'll turn the meeting back to you, Chair.
Thank you, moderator. We will be moving on to agenda item 5B, our enforcement activity report, which will be presented by Denise Murata, our manager of the enforcement division.
Good morning. My name is Denise Murata, and I'm the manager in the Enforcement Division. So this activity report covers the first 5 months of the fiscal year 25-26. On the first page, covering complaints received, the CBA has received over 1,100 complaints so far. The graph on the bottom of page 1 provides a comparison of the total complaints received of the same reporting period for the 2 prior fiscal years. On page 2, we've included data on the top of the 3 complaint types, with complaints regarding renewal deficiencies related to continuing education being the top complaint. Moving on to investigations and investigations pending. On page 3, CBA staff have closed over 1,000 cases with a 98% close within 1 year. The average day to close investigations was 64 days. And as of November 30th, the Enforcement Division had 509 cases in its pending investigations. And since November 30th, 5 cases have been over 24 months that have been closed, and 3 remain active investigation. Moving on to discipline, the discipline-related information can be found on page 4 of the report. Looking at AG referrals, the CBA referred 9 matters to the Attorney General's office and filed 13 pleadings. The CBA has 22 matters at the pending at the AG's office. And lastly, the CBA took action on 11 final disciplinary orders. Moving on to citations on page 5, the CBA issued over 400 citations. 93% of the citations were due to failing to comply with the 20 and 12 continuing education requirement. The CBA has withdrawn or modified 36 citations. In most cases, the licensees provide new mitigating evidence or have complied with the issue that resulted in the issuance of a citation. For unlicensed activity, which is found on page 6, the CBA has received 46 complaints regarding unlicensed activity, and we've closed 79 investigations for the first 5 months of the fiscal year. And lastly, for probation monitoring, found on page 7, as of November 30th, we had 50 licensees on probation with 2 new probationers since the last report. We identified 16 probation violations, with the majority of the violations being failure to submit their quarterly written reports. This concludes my presentation of the enforcement activity report. I'd like to turn the discussion over back to President Lada and be happy to answer any questions members may have.
Thank you, Ms. Murata. I will go ahead and continue to agenda item 5C, and we will take comments after the next couple of reports. Actually, we'll go ahead and do our board member comments now for the enforcement activity report, if there are any comments or questions. Ms. Hines?
So the unlicensed activity complaints received significantly down. Explanation for why that is so significant?
Yeah, over the past several fiscal years, we had a trend in receiving a specific type of unlicensed activity complaint related to advertising on a social media platform. So we have seen a decline in those types of complaints received, which is why you see the decline in the number.
Ms. Tu?
Can I clarify that? You're saying that there is a decline in the activity of advertising in the social media and so forth, or the actual complaint itself?
In the actual receipt of complaints regarding that specific type of unlicensed categories.
I have a question, please. In terms of the highest number of complaints, or I should say deficiencies, has been in the CE, in the area of CE. Is that the 2012?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, has there been a consensus in terms of asking these licensees why that's happening? Just out of curiosity?
No, we don't ask them why.
You don't
so
ask why?
I wouldn't know.
Okay.
It's not for lack of outreach. We have really done a lot of outreach efforts to make sure and keep them informed that they need to track the CE and meet the yearly requirement.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Franzella, did you have a comment?
I would just like to add that while we don't specifically ask them why, when they're issued the citation, if they file an appeal, they'll often explain or try to explain why. And I would say that most of the time they just don't remember, or they don't I hate to say don't care, but it's not. In some instances, they think it's onerous and unnecessary. So there's a host of reasons that they offer, but we do consider them when they file their appeal. And as you can see, sometimes we do modify them if there's reasons to do so. But it's not, as Ms. O'Connor mentioned, lack of education, or at least attempt to educate from our end. But some people feel it's just the cost of doing business and they choose to kind of take that route.
Any other board member comments or questions? Ms. Hines?
Yeah, I would like to go back to the unlicensed activity because it's really striking to me, like how significant the drop has been under the complaint categories: practice without a permit and individuals without a CPA license. And I assume these are, well, no, I'm not going to make that assumption. If you're saying that it's really because of, it's just social media advertising, but that just doesn't feel like that's the correlation between practicing without a permit and wrongful advertising or inappropriate advertising of their practice. I'm still trying to understand how significant of a dip. I mean, from 1,100 down to 11, it's as though it's insignificant. Nobody's not practicing without a license. I mean, I'd like to hope that's what we're experiencing for consumers, but that just feels a little hard to believe.
Mr. Franzella?
Yeah, so I think we've shared in the past that this type of, as Ms. O'Connor noted, that it was a type of investigate or a type of complaint we were receiving. It was an external complaint and an external complainant who was filing a lot of those complaints. That was the driving force behind the 2,400, the 1,800 complaints that we received. So it's not to say that there aren't people out there practicing without a permit, but there was a driving force behind it. And that's why you're seeing that drop, is we're not getting those complaints from that individual any longer. If that.
Like there was someone out there who was
correct,
taking, sort of leading the charge to address what they saw as
potential violations of it. And
Okay.
we would investigate them. I mean, we open cases on each one, make determinations. Some are closed without action because there's not a violation. There might be a perceived violation by the complainant, but there wasn't an actual violation. Some were correctable. Some were things we took action on. So, but at the end of the day, the driving force was there was a complaint filed with us, and those complaints aren't coming in at this time.
Okay, all right.
Ms. Corrigan?
A couple of comments. It's early yet in the year. And enforcement really doesn't know how to anticipate what's coming. So these are just the numbers. And so more is yet to come, I'm sure. Anyway, hopefully not, but probably. Thank you.
Ms. Tu?
Thank you. Complainant, are they allowed to be anonymous, or they are allowed to be anonymous?
They can be anonymous.
Any other comments or questions from the board members? Seeing none, we will continue on to the next agenda item, which is item 5D, our outreach activity report, which will be presented by our Information and Planning Officer, Mr. Hemphill. I missed one? Oh, sorry about that. I skipped ahead a little bit. We're on agenda item 5C, our licensing activity report, which will be presented by Patty Ritter, the manager of the examination unit.
Thank you, President Lada. I am Patty Ritter, and I am the manager of the examination unit. This licensing activity report, or LAR, covers July 1st, 2025 through November 30th, 2025. The LAR begins with the reporting of processing times. I am pleased to report that processing times remain below 30 days. I'm going to skip attachments 1 and 2 for now. First, I want to highlight a few 2025-2026 statistics starting on page 2. The licensing division received close to 12,000 telephone inquiries and nearly 28,000 email inquiries. This is a total of more than 39,000.
Table 3 shows the CBA approved 2,598 first-time applicants to sit for the CPA exam. This total is a summation of 344 early entry applicants and 2,254 non-early entry applicants. Table 4 shows the CBA approved 1,616 applications for new CPA and firm licenses. Table 7 on page 6 shows the CBA performed 375 audits. Of the 375 audits, 277 were found to be compliant and 27 were initially deficient but are now compliant. As shown in Table 8, the current licensing population is 115,396. That included 66,619 active CPAs and 7,079 active firms. Now I would like to turn your attention to attachments 1 and 2. Attachment 1 is the NASBA CPA exam performance summary for the third testing quarter of 2025. It includes 2 parts, one for California and the other for all NASBA jurisdictions. Attachment 2 is an interpretive guide to assist members with understanding the data in Attachment 1. Let's go over some highlights from the third quarter 2025. First, it is important to point out that all the data used in Attachment 2 is from the summary report in Attachment 1. Please turn to page 2 of Attachment 2. This is the overall performance table, and it reflects data for both first-time and repeat applicants by sections taken. This is a foundational table, and data from this table is used as a basis for several other tables and charts. You can see that the 51.1% of the total 5,724 sections taken were passed. This table also shows that the FAR section has the highest volume of administrations for California. This is also reflected in the overall performance table for all jurisdictions found in Attachment 1 on page 5. This is a good data point to reflect on what the report does not tell us, which is the why. We can hazard a guess that because it has a lower passing rate, candidates want to pass this section first, before starting their 30-month clock to pass the other sections, but it would just be an educated guess. Now please turn to page 3 of Attachment 2. This is the jurisdiction ranking table, which reflects California's rankings when compared to other jurisdictions that had 15 or more applicants. This table will only be found on the California Performance Summary and not on the overall Performance Summary. You can see that California ranks 34th for overall pass rate when compared to other jurisdictions. The ranking is not to be confused with overall section pass percentage of 51.1%. Pass percentages for individual sections can be found on the overall performance table discussed earlier on page 2 of Attachment 2. I hope you find the new interpretive guide useful and a reference you can use to help interpret future CPA exam performance summaries. That concludes my presentation. I will now turn it back over to President Lada, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Ritter. Mr. Franzella.
Thank you. So just before you turn it over to members, I just wanted to add that I really want to appreciate Michelle and her team related to putting that table together. We're trying to provide as much information and education to members as we can related to that attachment that we get from NASBA. I'll admit, like, until they did it for this board and I had a chance to review it, I was misreading that table quite often. But I know over the last couple of meetings, members have been asking some questions about the pass rate or certain information on that table. And while this team does our best to be educated in all those particular areas and answer members' questions, this is probably an area where we're not knowledgeable to that extent or can answer those questions. So as Ms. Lada had mentioned earlier, one of the kind of directives that staff is working under this next year is to reach out to the AICPA, NASBA, to have them come and present to this board, so you can kind of get that behind the scenes look from how they interpret that information, because they also ask questions about that information on a national level, and so they'll probably be able to respond to you in a more effective and efficient manner. As Ms. Ritter had noted, we can hazard a guess as to certain information, and I think it's a reasonable guess, but we'd rather you hear it from them rather than us taking those kind of educated guesses. But again, we hope you find that table very useful. I found it very useful. It's helped me read that report better going forward. We did run this after we put it together. We did send it to NASBA to get their blessing that we were interpreting it correctly, so you can feel assured, at least as it relates to what we're providing you, is consistent with how NASBA anticipates that or expects that table to be read. So again, thank you to the licensing team, and I'll turn it back over to Ms. Lada.
Thank you, Mr. Franzella. I did have a question, Ms. Ritter, on table 8 on page 7 of this item. I noticed that from June 30th, 2025, the count of total licensees decreased once we recounted in November of about 400. What would be the cause of the decrease in the license population? Mr. Franzella?
Was that the overall population?
Yes.
There's lots of different things that go into that. It's probably an artificial decrease. It's not necessarily that our population is diminishing, but people go in and out of inactive, they go into delinquent, they go canceled. A license has to sit in delinquent status for 5 years before it can cancel. So a lot of times there'll be like a big, population of people canceled, and so they're dropping off of our table. It looks like, just looking at it real quickly, that it's pretty standard across. I don't see any major red flags on anything. I think it's mostly just people canceling.
Do people cancel like voluntarily outside of going delinquent?
Yes, but it's very rare.
Okay. Okay, I was just curious. Any other board member comments or questions? Ms. Hines?
Yeah, I would think though that the total number, the bottom number, although it's smaller than the June 30th count, just keep in mind that we're in the middle of the fiscal year. So by June 30th of 2026, the total number overall in the CPAs could be actually higher, depending upon who passes, the examination this year. So even where people move in and out of active, or into delinquent or inactive, that still doesn't change the total overall population that the CBA has jurisdiction over. Is that right?
That is true. Over the years that I've been doing this, I have noticed that the end of the fiscal year will steadily increase, but we'll see a lot of fluctuations throughout the year.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Rafel.
Just a quick question, but going back to table 8 here, it looks like there was one of the reasons perhaps is that there was a big jump in the number of retirees. When you issue licenses, do you have a sense, or do you collect data, demographic data, which would show you what the median or average age of a licensee is?
We do, actually. That was in our trends report that I think we brought in September. And if I'm remembering correctly, the median age is about 30 for a new licensee.
30? 30?
30 for a new licensee.
For a new licensee.
Mhm.
How about just of all 115 of these?
I believe it was the majority of them were under 40, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
If they're, I couldn't name a specific age.
Sorry, this may or may not make it better. Are people aging out of the profession, and are people coming in to fill the retirees?
I believe that we probably will backfill the retirees. There's a couple of things that influence the retirement, and one of the main drivers is fees. So every time that the CBA increases renewal fees, there's a lot of licensees who are like, I'm really not practicing. This doesn't make sense for me anymore. They may contact us, and then we explain their options to them, and they go retired typically if they're eligible.
Mr. Franzella?
Apologies. So again, that dip is about what, a little less than 400 in that number from the end of fiscal year 25 to this time. And again, as Ms. Hines noted, there's going to probably be some influx when people pass the exam, get licensed and so on. But at the end of the day, I think what Ms. Benedict hit on at the beginning was you have a large chunk of people, what is it, about 14,000 at any given moment sitting in delinquent. And it's that delinquent group who sit there for 5 years if they're not doing anything. And then after 5 years, they cancel by operation of law. So they're in your population for up to a 5-year period. And depending on where you're at in that cycle, some number may fall off. And then it comes off of your bottom total, whether while the retired, the active, inactive, retired, the cores, pars, those are going to fluctuate up and down. But I think if you ever see a dip in your population that's that small that we're talking about here, it's likely because you had a chunk of people who were sitting in the expired status for the last 5 years and they fell off. So it's really not an effect to your overall population.
But they don't pay dues. Delinquents don't pay dues.
Correct. Yeah, they haven't paid anything for 5 years, haven't done anything for 5 years, and the law just says, okay, you're canceled. And so they fall off.
They're still on your books.
They're on your books because they're still, and technically when they are canceled, we don't count them anymore. But if something were to come up of such gravity, you could take action on a canceled license. So you still track them in some capacity, but they stop being reported as a population number. So I would look at this more as what Ms. Benedict spoke to earlier in terms of you had a chunk of people who came off as canceled.
Ms. Du?
Can you help me understand the difference between delinquent and inactive?
Yes, absolutely. So inactive is a choice. A licensee still pays the renewal fee and they choose to go inactive because they're not practicing public accountancy, but they can come out of inactive anytime as long as they complete their CE and submit the proper forms. Delinquent is someone who didn't pay the renewal fees, didn't contact us, didn't apply for retired. They're just not renewing for whatever reason. Sometimes it's intentional because they no longer wish to have their CPA license and they're just going to let it go. Sometimes it's just a matter of forgetting. There could be people in delinquent status for 30 days. There could be people in there for 5 years. It's a large group of people.
Inactive CPA, they are paying their dues. They just informing you that they're inactive. They're not practicing.
Correct. And the reason that they do that is because they can go active anytime without paying a fee. It's free to switch.
Ms. Hines, did you still have a question?
Yeah, just a couple of things I was going to comment on, some of the discussion that we've just been having. I was making notes to make sure I didn't forget what I was trying to say. To one of the points, the CBA keeps jurisdiction over anyone who has a CPA license, regardless of whether they're active or delinquent, or because that's the way that we're able to go after folks if they're, out there, causing harm to the public. To Mr. Apple's point, and I think what President Latta may have been getting to about the numbers, I think one of the things that we want to be concerned about or want to take note of is if we're seeing a decline in the number of CPAs and the availability of the pool of CPAs for consumers. And it's looking promising, like it's at least stabilizing. And some of the things we've been talking about over the last couple of years is, how do we increase the number of folks who are coming into the profession? Again, to the point that Mr. Apple made earlier about, what's the retirement age? I think it's promising in this NASBA chart, I think it's page, page 1. And it's the chart about, overall performance. When you look at the average age at the time of examination, you'll see that the biggest groups of licensees or biggest group of applicants or test takers are 22 to 23 and then over 30. And that's really has some promise to it because it suggests that folks are coming out of college and looking at, coming into the profession. But also we were talking about increasing the opportunities or attractiveness of CPA profession to people looking at it as a second or third career. And that 30+ number means that there is something happening where people are considering it as another career option where, overall in society, we're seeing people have multiple careers, professional careers, and we want people to consider becoming CPAs to keep that pool of, licensees really robust. So I really appreciated getting this report. I don't totally understand it yet. It's a lot of data and, a lot of rabbit holes that we could go down. So I think having NASBA come in and give us a presentation on it would be, helpful. Again, especially because as a board, we're looking at how do we ensure that we have a robust pool of licensees to provide services, and how do we make sure that, and we're also, as we're looking at changing the examination as well, how do we make sure that, the examination is meeting both the needs of protecting the public and regulating the practice, but then also making sure that prospective licensees are prepared to be able to take the test and then hopefully pass it.
Ms. Corrigan?
I have to ask if I have permission to jump to my state board committee report, just a portion of it that would help right now. Can I go ahead and do that? Okay.
Of course, Ms. Corrigan.
A portion of that report that will help us right now is that the AICPA is reporting through state board of examiners and those various committees that both domestic and international exam takers is on the increase. So the volume is actually higher for 2025 than was expected and almost back to the level of after the pandemic and after the exam changing. So, CPA evolution, that process, every change like that kind of has a hiccup and creates an issue. There's also they're seeing an increase in graduates. And then to add to that, they're kind of looking at AI and how to use all of this and to keep all of this moving in the same direction. So that was the VP's report at my latest committee meeting. And I'll stop with that. And there are other good news to come later. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Corrigan. I'm just going to go to Secretary Treasurer Batchelor because she's been waiting.
Thank you, President Lara. I was just going to add on what Ms. Hines was speaking on in terms of mid-year career persons that are decided to obtain a CPA license. Maybe the average age is 30, 40, 45. There's a lot of talented controllers out there that have been in the profession for a long time that worked their way up through the ranks and became controllers. And now they pose questions. I'm in different groups and I talk about these issues with them. And they're struggling in terms of whether or not they should step down should they pursue a CPA license? And then, but the problem with that is should they step down from a controller standpoint and become, in terms of getting the experience. So there's a mixed package out there now. Of course, if they're out of work for whatever reason, laid off or something like that, they would just go straight on into the career and go on and pursue it. But I just wanted to just add that on. But I did have another question also about licenses that are inactive, and then there's some that are canceled. In terms of the ones that are canceled, is there so many attempts to reach these people and then they're canceled? And if they are canceled, and maybe say for some reason they're out of touch with the board for whatever reason, and then they all of a sudden they discover that their license has been canceled, what is the reinstatement process for that? And please don't say they have to take the exam over. But just curious about that fact. No, these are the persons that are canceled.
Yeah, we do send to be canceled letters. And yeah, we do contact them. They get a notice of delinquency, and then they also get a notice of, as we're getting close to that 5-year period, that they might be canceled. At that point, it's still that the issue is it's incumbent upon them to have address of record that we can contact them with, and potentially after 5 years, it may not be a valid address anymore. But if they are canceled, the process is they just reapply for a new license. And then it's a CE-based approach to getting the license back. It's a structured 80 hours of CE, depending on if you're coming back with if you're a general experience, or if you're coming back with you'd met the attest experience in the past and you want the attest experience that attest function going forward. There's a CE path to bring you current. So it's not like you never can get your license back. But the one thing I did want to mention again with this, the table's informational. I really would hazard to say it's not the best table to try to glean trends information from. That's why we bring that September item to the board, where we have a lot more of that trend information in terms of what we're seeing over, I think it's like a 10-year period, to really have a better sense of what those trends look like. It does sound like, I do know we report some age information in there, but there's a potential that we can report increased age information, or not increasing the age, but more information related to age, so that there's maybe more touch points for members to kind of look at as to what we're seeing. But I would say this information, if you ever see it go from like 115 to 97, yeah, we probably have a problem. But from a little bit here and there, I would say the September item, or the November, I can't remember when we bring it. It just depends on when we get certain data. That's the best item to kind of really take that time and assess what we're really seeing in terms of the overall trends, both to exam, licensing applicants, renewals, age of our population, those types of things. So again, there's good information here, but I think it's really just snapshotty, and it's hard to make a lot of inferences at this particular time.
President Lada, do you mind if I respond to the other comments that were made by members Batchelor and Hines?
Not at all. Please proceed, Ms. Center.
I do want to just acknowledge that we hear you in terms of these career changers, these individuals that are looking at their second, third, fourth, I think you said, career options. And we had that in our mind when we did AB 1175, and wanting to make sure that we considered pathways that might be more appropriate to those individuals, right? But David Hemphill and I, we talk quite frequently, and this is a conversation that we have specifically been talking about, how to highlight going forward pathways for those individuals that might be in that particular situation. Because that may not be obvious to them, right? So we are having those conversations. You will hear about that at future board meetings. And I just wanted to make sure I had a chance to kind of toot our horn a little bit on that one.
Thank you, Ms. Center. Any other board? Ms. Dong?
So that's really something that jumped up at me from this particular item on the agenda was actually from the NASBA data, and maybe it's a hot potato, but why do we think that women are passing this exam at lower rates than men? And it seems to be consistent across the board. California first-time test takers, overall test takers for California, and overall across the nation. And is there something that we can understand better about this to help improve the pipeline of test takers? This might also relate to what you were saying about mid-career changes. Women who are coming back into the workforce, they may not be as prepared to take the fairly rigorous exam.
Mm-hmm.
So is there more that we can ask NASBA to do in order to be able to understand this better?
Ms. Center?
I think that is a great question as we consider this future presentation that's going to happen, hopefully, fingers crossed, where NASBA and AICPA come. Those why questions, I think they have more ability to try and either have answers or at least have more educated guesses, because they have those touch points more than we do. But we are thinking about the questions you have asked previously related to the exam, as well as this, we'll add this new question to that as we think forward to that presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Center. And I'd just like to add, any other comments or questions that the board members have as they review these test results or materials, we had discussed maybe having members send questions in advance if they come to you in between the meetings so that staff can propose these questions to whoever is going to provide the presentation so that we can get those more direct questions answered. So you have the freedom and availability to the staff to send those questions at any time. Any other member questions or comments on this item? All right, thank you guys. Seeing none, I will go ahead and move on to item 5D, the outreach activity report, which will be presented by David Hemphill, our information and planning officer.
All right, good afternoon, members. President Lata, thank you so much. I am David Hemphill, Information Planning Officer, and I'll be presenting item 5D, which is the Outreach Activity Report. So I'd like to start with a quick recap of our first outreach event of the year. On January 8th, the CBA was the featured presenter at the latest in Cal CPA's series of candidate town halls. I had the opportunity to present to the more than 50 attendees and spoke about the role of the CBA and, of course, the main topic of the requirements for licensure and how they'll be changing in 2027. I was joined by Initial Licensing Unit Analyst Alexis Gonzalez and Examination Unit Manager Patty Ritter, who answered the aspiring CPA's questions. The 2026 outreach calendar is already filling up quickly, with the spring leg of the CBA campus tour kicking off next month. Staff will visit more campuses, both virtually and in person this semester. The outreach team is communicating with universities and community colleges around California to schedule these appearances. We will begin at my alma mater, Chico State University, go Wildcats, on February 5th. I'm excited for the opportunity to head back up there and share with those students. This will be followed by a couple of days in San Diego with events at UC San Diego and the University of San Diego. We have 5 other in-person events on the itinerary, including outreach events surrounding our March CBA meeting, which will be happening at California State University East Bay. In addition to these on-campus events, there will be several virtual campus tour events, including some with community colleges. Speaking of community colleges, we are coordinating with licensing staff to plan a webinar in early March for community college leaders to begin laying the foundation for developing a CBA recognized certificate program at their school. We can't wait to get started again so the CBA can help as many students as possible across California with their knowledge and understanding of the upcoming changes to CPA licensure requirements. So while the campus tour focuses on the aspiring CPAs, they are only a part of the CBA's overall audience, as I will mention shortly when we discuss the 2026 outreach plan. We are working on additional events to connect with other community members, high school students, seniors, not high school seniors, actual seniors, and more. There is already a senior fair on the books that we will attend in June, with more on the way. Moving on to multimedia content, the CBA released an announcement video to celebrate that the CBA now allows candidates to pay with a credit card when applying online for the CPA exam. Additionally, an updated CPA exam applicant step-by-step tutorial video is currently in production, should be due out next week. The new revised video will now mention the new ability to pay with a credit card. The original video has been viewed over 8,700 times since its launch 1 year ago last January, and we anticipate many more views with the new payment feature included. As President Lata mentioned earlier, 2026 also marks something very exciting. The CBA is celebrating a big anniversary this year, 125 years ago that we were founded. We designed a special anniversary logo that is being used on social media and other documents throughout the year. There it is. Right there. If you haven't seen it before, it's on top there. And there will be lots of other fun elements designed to honor this milestone, which will be shared with the members soon. We're going to do quite a few features and all of the update issues of 2026. We're researching some fun historical elements that I look forward to sharing all of those with you. Speaking of update, issue number 107 was published in mid-December. The poinsettia on the cover was the 4th and final in the California State Flowers series. If you notice, we featured on all of the 2025 covers. And this edition officially marked the first time that 4 issues of Update were published in 1 year. And as I've told you many times now, they were all designed completely in-house. I like bragging about my team. They do a great job. That, of course, means we're already hard at work on issue 108, which will be due out in late February. This edition will include President Lada's first message as president and will introduce the CBA's 125th anniversary. Turning to social media, 2025 was another steady year of growth. We officially hit over 20,000 total followers. We hit that milestone last month in December. Another milestone, LinkedIn on its own surpassed 10,000 followers just last week. We made a celebratory post to commemorate the occasion. There were notable increases in activity and audience interaction throughout the year. LinkedIn content, 336,000 total impressions for the year. Facebook, 22,000 visits to the page. Looking at one specific post, so that the announcement about the new credit card payment option for exam applicants obviously was really good news. We had the video that went with it. So that specific post hit over 6,000 impressions on LinkedIn. The video was viewed over 3,000 times just on LinkedIn, and then another 1,000 times on Facebook and Instagram. So good numbers for all of that. Finally, we're looking ahead to the first week of March, which is Consumer Protection Week. So we're developing plans for what we'll do on social media to highlight the CBA's ongoing commitment to consumer protection, not just during that week, but all year long. So that concludes my presentation on the Outreach Activity Report. I'll turn it back to President Lada, but I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hemphill. Do we have any board comments or questions on the Outreach Activity Report? Okay, seeing none, I'll go ahead and take public comment here in Sacramento for items 5B through D. Seeing none, moderator, please open WebEx for public comment on agenda items 5B through D.
Thank you. This is the moderator. If anyone would like to make a comment on any of these items, you may look for the hand icon, typically at the bottom of your WebEx screen. If you're on a mobile device, the hand icon might be behind the 3-dot other options. And if you are a call-in user, you can press *3 to raise your hand. Each speaker will have 5 minutes with a 30-second warning. Are there any comments on the agenda items? I do not see any requests for comment. I'll turn the meeting back to you.
Thank you, moderator. We will continue on to agenda item 5E, discussion and possible action to approve the California Board of Accountancy 2026 Outreach Plan. Welcome back, Mr. Hemphill, Information and Planning Officer, for this next presentation.
Still here. Thank you very much, President Lauder. So the purpose of this item is to provide the board with an opportunity to discuss, hopefully provide feedback, and possibly approve the proposed 2026 outreach plan, which I will now refer to as the 2026 plan. And it is, you can view it as attachment 1. So the goal of the 2026 plan is to provide a framework that discusses the CBA's strategic communication and outreach goals and how it intends to increase the effectiveness of its activities in pursuit of those goals. The 2026 plan is directly linked to the CBA's 2025 to 29 strategic plan and our 7 specific outreach goals listed on page 3 of the attachment, aligning with specific objectives within the strategic plan to help fulfill the CBA's mission of consumer protection. Our outreach mission is to brand the CBA as a trusted, supportive, and competent organization so it is viewed with confidence by stakeholders. The 2026 plan defines our target audiences as consumers, licensees, aspiring CPAs, academia, and elected officials and legislators. It discusses the importance of leveraging partnerships to help achieve our goals. One of the primary messaging goals for all target audiences is to raise awareness of the CBA and its role so it can be seen as that trusted, supportive, and competent organization. Last year, our number of partnerships with educational institutions rose greatly as a result of our campus tour initiative. This year, we look to continue building on these partnerships and working together with universities and community colleges to help expand our network of potential partners even further. We plan to stay in regular communication with these academic partners to keep the relationship active to ensure they know we are a resource for them and their students. To ensure the success of our outreach program, the CBA employs a variety of assets. This includes the CBA website, our update newsletter, brochures and flyers, events, of course, and even you, our CBA and the committee members, who can lend your professional expertise and credibility to the CBA's work. A full list of assets can be found on page 12 of the 2026 plan. Moving on to page 13, that's where you'll see our priorities for the coming year. They're identified. I'll briefly go over those now. We'll start with outreach events with consumers, applicants, and licensees. That will obviously continue to be a priority in 2026. This year, the CBA plans to increase its participation in a wide variety of outreach events, including high school career fairs and consumer-focused community events, things like that. We'll also coordinate with partners such as DCA boards and bureaus and other state departments to add to our outreach schedule, if that makes sense. Last year saw a record number of events overall, and we want to build on this success and explore other opportunities that will expand our reach further. Another key priority from the 2026 plan is the Assembly Bill 1175 new licensure requirements outreach to ensure that all stakeholders are aware of the changes coming to CPA licensure requirements that will take effect next January 1st, 2027. This particularly relates to students and faculty at institutions of higher learning who are the primary audience for the campus tour, which will be continuing this spring. Hiring firms and current licensees will also be among the target audience, ensuring that the new licensure requirements are commonly understood by all stakeholders prior to their effective date. This outreach is not limited to events, but also includes strategic messaging on social media and all other available platforms. I did touch on our educational institution partnerships earlier, but that priority, I also wanted to mention this year, we'll have a specific focus on community colleges as we look to establish the certificate recognition program with them. We are planning a webinar, like I mentioned in the outreach activity report, with community college leaders in March to kick off the discussions for how this process may work so they can begin designing a certificate program at their school. Social media engagement, a priority that will always be an area of focus, and the CBA saw the significant successes last year. Overall engagement continues to increase, and we'll be focusing more heavily on analytics this year to see how we can further propel those interactions. Website updates will be another key priority as the website continues to be the CBA's primary form of conveying information and service to our stakeholders. This will include a redesign of the website this year to ensure it meets the needs of all stakeholders and incorporates opportunities to increase interactive functions. Accounting firm outreach was also briefly mentioned previously. Our messaging in this area will include information about the licensure requirements, and we'll use this as a way to build up our communication with them to form these relationships within that community. Last, but certainly not least, growing audience diversity. It is critical that the CBA increases the diversity of its messaging to ensure we continue to reach a broader audience of California stakeholders. We want to ensure our messaging can reach all demographics, including those that have previously not been a focus or find themselves underrepresented in the accounting profession. So those are priorities for this year. Also want to note for you that attachment 2 provides a detailed update on last year's priorities. And I'm happy to report the CBA accomplished a great deal last year. This includes significant work keeping stakeholders in the know all the way through the AB 1175 legislative process, culminating in its signing into law, successfully publishing 4 editions of the update newsletter, and a significant increase in the total number of outreach events held, and they're all listed for you there. We welcome any feedback the board may have, and it is our recommendation that the CBA approve the 2026 outreach plan. So that concludes my presentation. I'll turn it back to you, President Lata, but of course I'm happy to answer any questions members may have. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Hemphill, for that comprehensive update. I do have a question about the audience diversity. You mentioned us trying to be more accessible to different communities. I was curious in terms of languages, what are we planning to offer? Do we already offer materials or website language in Spanish? And just what languages were we planning to incorporate?
Thank you. As of now, Spanish is primarily the go-to language. We translate basically all of our news releases into that. This past year, we did when we were translating, we did a kind of an updated version of our consumer assistance handbook, and we converted that into Spanish, Korean, simplified Chinese, and what's the other one? Vietnamese. You helped me with that one. Thank you. Correct. So we kind of, yes, so thank you for your expertise. And kind of something we've been doing is even based on potentially the release for new members, Zelensky, we are getting translated into Filipino, and we're going to put that into, she has recommended some Filipino language media outlets to put that in, and thank you for your recommendations for that. So kind of like to maybe even adjust based on, you know, the particular you know, content in said release. But that is something that we're going to explore. And we have, you know, California has its kind of top languages, and, you know, that's going to be a big focus this year as to beyond what's currently there, what assets do we want to have translated that aren't currently?
Great. Are there any other areas? Oh, actually, before I continue, Ms. Pierce.
I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. I just want to let you know that the website can also be translated into 100,
Millions.
200 different languages. There's an option to translate it, so that can be translated into any language.
Yeah,
Wow,
there's a
that's amazing.
Google Translate feature right on the
Okay.
top there. Yeah.
Oh, that's really great. I wanted to continue on. So still on the topic of diversity, what other things are we considering outside of the language translations? Are there any other areas we're
Well,
thinking about?
that's something that's part of our strategic plan, because as you see, that's a couple of the goals. So we're kind of in the process right now. Staff is developing exactly what you're asking, kind of those, what specific things are we doing? And so I look forward to bringing those back to you. We're in, if you remember November's presentation about kind of how we're working through the strategic plan, that's about where we are at this point, is starting to lay the tasks in. So I will absolutely follow up with you on that at a
Okay.
future meeting.
Ms. Tu?
I just want to mention that, especially in California, you have a lot of in-language publication. Since you have the newsletters, not newsletter, news release translated, we just need to identify the in-language and make sure that they receive it as well.
Right. Yeah. Thank you.
And can I continue by making a motion? Or do you?
Sure, we can continue the discussion after that. Yeah.
Bring yourself on.
I just want to make a motion to approve the 2026 outreach plan.
Do I have a second? Mr. Rayful? Mr. Rayful, second. Okay, any additional comments? Mr. Rayful?
Yeah, I think it would be remiss if we didn't comment about how great this looks. You and your team have really done a good job looking at outreach. You know, it strikes me, if you read the newspapers every day, one of the things that people talk about a lot is the fact that government's unresponsive and not transparent. This goes entirely the opposite way. The only thing I would suggest is when you have, so the point is, you really deserve a lot of congratulations for what you've put out here. The only suggestion I have is, in order to celebrate the 125th anniversary, maybe we should have a cake.
Noted.
Thank you.
Ms. Hines?
Yes, overall, I just want to, echo, commendation on this comprehensive report. It's really helpful to help us, to guide us in visualizing the direction that we should be going in outreach. One of the things that I want to, I guess, advice or guidance or suggestions offer is that these are all items that we should, as a board, should always be striving to accomplish. So it can be really hard to measure what success looks like or measure outcomes and how, to measure like what we did last year versus what we accomplished this year. And so, maybe think about how to make those comparisons, because while it's true to say like we grew our presence, it's helpful to have a context as to how we grew our presence, or how we have strengthened or deepened the connections with educational institutions, like, measurements that are different than just quantitative, like qualitative, measurements to help us to, really document and talk with the public about, about the work that, you all are doing and that the board is overseeing. I think that would be really helpful.
Sure. Yeah. And speaking to that piece about kind of the educational partnerships, that was probably one of the most, major step forwards, I would say. How, I mean, we've contacted a good, out of all the UCs and CSUs, just about all of them. And now some of them we had a relationship with in the past, a few, and now we have a relationship with virtually all of them. And that's kind of part of what we're going to do in here. We want to not just reach out to them when we want something from them, but kind of reach out on a more regular basis. Say, hey, we're here. Here's the latest. Do you have any questions for us? We're getting close to January 1st, 2027. Just kind of keep them in the loop on a more regular thing so they can feel confident coming to us with any questions. So
I may just add, like, the cultivation of relationships with educational institutions, with legislators, with other, leaders, experts in the profession, that becomes really important as we are faced with having to enact, changes and regulations and things like that, because then we can go to those folks and we already have a relationship, they are, following us, and they're better able to engage with us and inform us as we're going through those processes. So it's not just about like making sure everybody knows, hey, being a CPA is a great career path, but also making sure that we have the resources that we need in order to make sure that we're all doing our work properly. So
yeah,
thanks again.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hines. Any other board member comments or questions? Oh, Ms. Pierce, did you have?
Remember, but a comment just in response to Ms. Hines regarding, measuring outcomes, and this kind of relates to that. One of the other things that we've implemented a little bit last year, but we're also going to really focus on this year, is that engagement and soliciting feedback from those that we're engaging with. And it kind of goes to outcomes, but really what we're wanting to make sure is that we're getting the message to them and they're getting what they need, whether it's the applicants, the educators, other stakeholders, consumers. And so we're really going to be focusing on, things like surveys and trying to draw feedback so that we can use that to, improve, enhance, give us some measurement on areas that we can, change to make sure that we're getting the best message out there that we can.
Thank you. I did want to just add that as I look at the target audiences, I feel very strongly that the firm should be included in that. It seems like a missing puzzle piece to me. I do know we have some messaging that we plan to communicate to the firms, which is great, but I think a continued view of them as one of our target audiences would be beneficial. I don't know if it's past the time to officially include that, but if so, I would urge that we consider maybe including that going forward if we can.
For us, she's mentioning the target audience on page 4. We use the term licensees generically. Licensees is not just individual, it's firms as well.
Thank you for the clarification. Thank you. All right. Any additional board member comments or questions on this item? Okay. Seeing none, any public comments on this item here in Sacramento? Seeing none, moderator, please open WebEx for public comment on agenda item 5E.
Thank you. This is the moderator. If anyone would like to make a comment on the report, you may look for the hand icon, typically at the bottom of the WebEx screen, or if you're on a mobile device behind the 3-dot other options. Are there any comments on the report? I do not see any requests for comment. I'll turn the meeting back to you.
Thank you, moderator. Ms. Reed, can you please take the vote?
Member Aguilar,
Yes.
Member Batchelor,
Yes.
Member Corrigan,
Yes.
Member Dong,
Yes.
Member Hines, Member Lotta,
Yes.
Member Lynn,
Yes.
Member Rayful.
Yes.
Member Thompson,
Yes.
Member Two,
Yes.
and Member Zelensky.
Yes.
The motion carries.
All right, thank you. So that will bring us to our lunch break this afternoon at 12:28. So we will be returning at 1:28. Thank you. All right, good afternoon. Welcome back after our lunch break. We will be continuing on with item 6, the report on the Enforcement Advisory Committee, the Peer Review Oversight Committee, and the Qualifications Committee. And we'll be starting with our Enforcement Advisory Committee report, item 6A, which will be presented by Carrie O'Connor, our Chief of Enforcement.
Thank you. I am filling in for our chair, Jennifer Benjamin, who couldn't be here today. So the EAC held its meeting in person on December 4th at the LA Marriott Burbank Airport. And I would like to thank CBA member Nancy Corrigan for attending the EAC meeting and providing an update on the CBA activities. We had a very busy day at this EAC meeting and conducted 5 investigative hearings. Our next meeting will be held on February 5th here at the CBA office. I'll now turn it back over to President Lotta and answer any questions members may have about the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. O'Connor. Do we have any board member questions or comments on this item? All right. Thank you, Ms. O'Connor. Moving on to item 6B, our Peer Review Oversight Committee. This report will be provided by Fausto Hinojosa, CPA, which is our chair via WebEx.
Good afternoon, President Lotta, members of the board. I am Fausto Hinojosa, chair of the CBA's Peer Review Oversight Committee. I am happy to provide a report on the PROC's December 12th meeting. First, I would like to thank Sarah Benedict, manager of the License Renewal Unit, for providing an overview of the CBA's activities from the September and November CBA meetings at our meeting. The PROC welcomed a new member to the committee, Mr. Vikram Deshpande, CPA. We look forward to working with him on the committee's activities. The PROC members engaged in several oversight activities since its August meeting. Members attended 8 report acceptance body meetings. PROC members reported that these meetings all met expectations. I attended a peer review board meeting and concluded that the peer review board meeting met expectations. Effectiveness for its role in the peer review process. Additionally, members reviewed 2 out-of-state administering entities, Ohio Society of CPAs and the Florida. It was determined that they complied with the administrative procedures and standards in all material respects as established by the CBA. On October 3rd, PROC members Laura Ross and Alan Gittleson completed the 2025 administrative site visit to the California Society of Certified Public Accountants. Licensing Chief Michelle Senner and a representative from the AICPA were also in attendance. Those that attended the annual site visit reported that the visit went smoothly and that CalCPA administers peer reviews in accordance with the standards adopted by the CBA. The PROC was presented with the following reports. The American Institute of Certified Public Accountants Peer Review Program Annual Report on Oversight, which was issued April 23rd, 2025. The American Institute of CPA's Peer Review Program National Peer Review Committee 2024 Annual Report on Peer Review Activities, issued May 22nd, 2025. Also a report on alternative practice structures. Lastly, the PROC reviewed and discussed the draft 2025 Peer Review Oversight Committee Annual Report. The PROC provided staff with edits and suggestions that CBA staff will incorporate and bring back to the PROC for review and approval. The next PROC meeting will be held on February 26th. I would like to turn the discussion on this item back over to President Lara, and I'd be happy to answer any questions members may have.
Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Hinojosa. Do I have any comments or questions from the board members? Mr. Rafel.
Thank you. Thank you for your service. My name is Bruce Rafel. I'm a member of the board. I have just a question which you may or may not know. We just got a report that there's about 61,000 active licensees in the state. Of those, how many do you estimate actually engage in peer review?
Question. I think that might be better addressed by somebody on our staff. We do have those numbers, I believe, somewhere. I'm not sure if they were in the most recent report received. So I'm not sure if Ms. Center or Ms. Benedict might have that information more readily available.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Hinojosa. Ms. Center, would you like to address that question?
I don't have that at my fingertips. I would need time to navigate unless you do, Mr. Okay. Do you want to attempt to read the table?
So within our annual report for last year, I know we have an updated report that'll be coming to the board in March, but for the last, for 2024, it has type of review for 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023. And in 2020, there were 860 reviews performed. In 2021, just over 1,000, excuse me. In 2022, 920, and in 2023, it was 826.
Any additional board member comments or questions on this item? Okay, seeing none, I will move on to agenda item 6C, which is for the qualifications committee. We actually don't have a report on this agenda item. So I will now be taking public comment for items 6A through 6B here in Sacramento. Seeing none, moderator, please open WebEx for public comment on agenda item 6.
Thank you. This is the moderator. If anyone would like to make a comment on any of the committee reports, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. Each speaker will have 5 minutes with a 30-second warning. Any comments on the reports? I do not see any requests. I'll turn the meeting back to you, Chair.
Thank you, moderator. We will now be moving on to agenda item number 7, which is the discussion and possible action on meeting minutes. This item is for approval of the minutes. First, can I get a motion to adopt the minutes of the November 20th to 21st, 2025 California Board of Accountancy meeting, specifically agenda item 7A? Thank you, Mr. Rafel. Do I have a second? Ms. Thompson?
I'll second.
Thank you. Okay, any board member comments or questions on these minutes? Seeing none, any public comments on agenda item 7A in Sacramento? Seeing none, moderator, please open WebEx for public comment on agenda item 7A.
Thank you. As a point of information, staff are the only ones on the WebEx at this time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Ms. Reed, please take the vote.
Member Aguilera?
Yes.
Member Batchelor?
Yes.
Member Corrigan?
Yes.
Member Dong?
Yes.
Member Hines? Member Lotta?
Yes.
Member Lynn?
Yes.
Member Rafel?
Yes.
Member Thompson?
Yes.
Member Tu?
Yes.
And Member Zelensky?
Abstain.
Thank you. The motion carries.
Thank you. And just to clarify, that vote and that motion includes non-substantive edits that were noted after the materials received. Okay, moving on. Can I now get a motion to accept the committee minutes, specifically agenda items 7B through 7F, which includes non-substantive edits that were noted after the materials were received for the committee minutes? Mr. Rafel? Thank you. Do I have a second? Ms. Tu?
I second.
Thank you. Do I have any board member comments or questions on these minutes? Seeing none, any public comment here in Sacramento on agenda items 7B through F? Seeing none, moderator, any comments on WebEx for items B through F from the public?
We still have only staff online.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Reed, can you please take the vote?
Member Hines? Member Lotta?
Yes.
Member Lynn?
Yes.
Member Rayful?
Yes.
Member Thompson?
Yes.
Member Two?
Yes.
Member Zelensky?
Abstain?
Member Aguilera?
Yes.
Member Bachelor?
Yes.
Member Corrigan? And Member Dong?
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. We will be moving on to agenda item 8, our other business. First, we have AICPA items for A, and we'll be starting with report on meetings of the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants attended by any California Board of Accountancy members. And first up, we have Ms. Nancy Corrigan continuing her report on the State Board Committee.
Thank you, President Lott. I appreciate that. The State Board Committee met virtually on January 12th. And as a part of that, typically we have an update from our chair. The chair sits on the Board of Examiners just about various committees and what's happening. One of the things that was discussed at that meeting, which I'll go into a little bit further in just a bit, a little concern over the FAR and the BAR rates, exam rates, some struggling there. AICPA is really taking a look at the new exam and results, that sort of thing. They did mention no fee increase for 26, 27, which is really good for candidates. The various jurisdictions reporting in, and there are a variety of states represented on that committee, a handful actually. A number of jurisdictions are looking at the CPE hours and requirements such as we are, so that's pretty common. And the private equity alternate practice structures issue is a very common one. Everyone kind of starting to wrestle with, the AICPA's exposure draft, the complexities, and looking to see what some of the others, especially the bigger jurisdictions, are doing. And others are looking at the occupational licensing issue, the definition of professional license, and how accountants should be considered, which we know is kind of a national issue. Some states, jurisdictions are mentioning seeing an increase in CPAs and those, taking the exam. So that's one of those, positives that we're talking about. And others looking at retired status. North Dakota specifically that. Also accounting internships not counting as experience requirements. So just a variety of topics are being looked at by the jurisdictions. We've got an operations update. There is a new survey that is being conducted by the AICPA, trying to determine, monitoring and encouraging candidates get in, take the exam, get it passed, but where they are in the system, also gathering lots of demographics, education, work experience, their perspectives on the CPA exam, because they want to gather useful information, kind of an analysis of candidate performance versus education and experience. So they're doing that sort of thing that should be very helpful overall. And then I mentioned concern about the pass rates on FAR and BAR. So all of that kind of gets incorporated into what they're taking a look at. So the AICP has a new tracking system, and NASB also has a mobile app available now. So the big organizations that are responsible, for creating the exam and administering the exam, trying to do everything they can do to encourage candidates and keep that process going, which is concern really for all of us. And that completes my report, including what I mentioned prior, as far as an increase in exam takers and that sort of thing. And I turn it back over to you, President Lata.
Thank you, Ms. Corrigan. Any board member comments or questions on the State Board Committee report? Okay. Seeing none, we will continue on to the next item and take public comment at the end of all the presentations. So we are on item B, for the NASBA reports, the first of which will be the Enforcement Resources Committee report, which will be provided by our Vice President, Doug Aguilera.
Thank you, President Lotta. We had the Enforcement Resources Committee had our first meeting of this term December 19th. And we talked about last year's progress, where we're going this year, including I'll call it a Robert's Rules webinar that was supposed to take place today. And it conflicted with this meeting. So luckily the presenter had a last minute cancellation and it's going to be rescheduled, hopefully so that we can see this. It's an expert in Robert's Rules, a North Carolina attorney who has offered a free 1-hour webinar training. And we thought this would be beneficial in our last year's meetings. Here in California, we're not required to follow the Robert's Rules of Order, but it's as I understand from Mr. Franzella, it's a good guideline for us. And but other states are required to follow it. And so the webinar was going to give an overview, which I thought was a great idea, and I'm glad that it got canceled today. Hopefully rescheduled to a time when when it doesn't conflict with one of our meetings. And then there's a lot of interest, like there was last year, in having one in-person meeting. And so we're working on that. The location suggestion is Nashville, or tacking it on to an upcoming regional meeting in Idaho, sometime in early May or June. And generally a good discussion with an engaged group of people. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Vice President Aguilera. Any board comments or questions on this item? All right, let's continue on to our Inclusion Committee report, which will be given by Secretary Treasurer Batchelor.
Thank you, President Lara. I'm on the NASBA Inclusion Committee, and our meeting was held on December 16th of 2025. It was basically a kickoff meeting in order to introduce the new members to the group and to the committee, and the other members to share some of their experiences, based on work that they done for the preceding year. And it was really nice. We had a icebreaker, and the icebreaker was, an inclusion environment feels like blank to me. So that was a pretty fun exercise, and a lot of discussion with that. So, but anyway, this particular committee is what their goal is to provide opportunities, encouragement, and support to unrepresented NASBA members, and they want them to participate in service and leadership roles. So the liaison shared some processes of how to navigate through SharePoint to find sites, to find resources for this initiative, and various committee members from last year provided their personal experience with the outreach efforts and the impact that the program had on the NASBA board members and the committee. So, and it was pretty positive, to be honest, and to say the least. And there was information shared about the partnerships and collaborations established with Ascend. And I'm going to say Alpha is ALPFA, so I'm saying Alpha, all these acronyms. And then they have NABA, which is National Association of Black Accountants. The liaison discussed the desire to deepen those relationships within those organizations, to have members to be encouraged to be professional members of boards like state boards of accountancies, as what we do, state societies, CalCPA, similar to like CalCPA, and then ultimately serve with NASBA. The liaison also discussed task force subcommittees focused on expanding partnerships and supporting state society efforts. There's a lot of outreach in the various state society efforts, and from my experience with CalCPA, they have a group called YEPS, and they're young emerging professionals, and they have a lot of activities for them to participate in. I was a board member at one time on Cal CPA Los Angeles chapter, and I would go out to different events and things like that to be a face for the, the young professionals. And it seems like the more mature professionals in the society, we have a tendency to fall off. So my goal for 2026 is to get back out there. And so the liaison also talked about the next meeting, which dates which will be held in March. One's in March 17th in Nashville, Tennessee. And the next one would be June, which is a virtual meeting, June 16th. And the last one would be September 15th is a virtual meeting. And that's the end of my presentation. That's all I have.
Thank you, Secretary Treasurer Batchelor. Any board member comments or questions on that presentation? Seeing none, we will move on to our item Legislative Support Committee report, which will be provided by Ms. Tu.
Thank you, President Latte. This is Legislative Support Committee, and we have a meeting on January 6th of this month. And during the meeting, the bulk of our meeting was actually the Florida update on the deregulation issue, but we also got update on bill tracking as well as legislation. Hold on, what is it specifically called? It's a toolkit for state to be able to use, especially the one page, the last time I report out regarding creating one page to be ready, especially the smaller states. They need to be ready for legislators that are either planning to do deregulations and so forth. The Florida update was very interesting because they had Shelley Weird and Jason Harrell from the Florida Institute of CPA giving us a presentation of kind of like what happened last year with Florida, of the deregulation of attempt by the legislature to get rid of their CPA board. And the two takeaway I got from the presentation is that they were successful last year to fend off the deregulation and getting rid of the board, but legislation is already planning to continue this issue. I mean, it's another bill that is coming up this year, and one thing strategies change a little bit is to see if we can carve out the CPA board, just like the medical board and the attorney board was able to carve themselves out of the whole Florida's deregulation efforts. But that was pretty much the bulk of our meeting. If you have any question, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you, Ms. Tu. Any board member questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll continue on to the next item, which is the report for Standards Setting and Professional Trends Advisory Committee, which I will be providing. Our meeting was December 10th, virtually as well. And it was also a kickoff meeting, similar to Ms. Batchelor. For her committee. Some of the things we talked about were the private equity task force and the white paper that was to be coming out, which we now have seen and are addressing today. So since we'll be talking more about that item later, I don't have much to add on that, but just they were soliciting questions and feedback from stakeholders, which we'll be participating in later today. They also talked about the AICPA Fall Council that they had, where they did also have a deregulation panel, largely focused on another deregulation bill brought in Florida, which Ms. Tu just mentioned. So we briefly discussed that and just any suggestions that the committee members might have where NASBA could support the state boards better or be more proactive in these potential deregulation bills that are coming up and may eventually affect other states besides Florida. So that was a pretty top level conversation we had there. I think the largest conversation that we had was regarding the federal education policy and the reclassification of accounting degrees amongst many others to a non-professional status, which decreases the amount of funding available to accounting students and other professional students as well. There was a discussion about how perhaps the industry as a whole moving to decrease the hours from 150 to 120 could have had an impact on that. That's what one of the committee members offered as a thought. And it was just a general conversation about the impact of that. NASBA has already responded to that, as well as Cal CPA has put out a statement on their stance on that reclassification as well. So since the focus of this particular committee is any disruptive or emerging trends, that was a big topic that we discussed. So moving on, we had a brainstorming session at the end of the meeting. Again, mostly focused on that non-professional classification topic. And then we did also discuss like the status of where states might be in the CPE discussion regarding potential decrease of CPE hours. And it's a very early conversation. There are other states amongst ours talking about that topic. And then I did learn that AICPA and NASBA have a co-task force related to this topic. One of the committee members who was a part of that group did say that they're not looking to lead that discussion, but they want to know where boards are at in that discussion, and they would like us to be very proactive with sharing information as to where we are in that process. I also will share that they do plan to meet in person in September, and then our next meeting will be in March virtually. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Mr. Franzella, did you want to add anything? Okay, Ms. Tu.
Yeah, to add on to your comment regarding the CE, part of our discussion in the legislative committee is also about the fact that the deregulation is not only to get rid of the board itself, but also get rid of all CE's requirements too.
Yes, that would be correct. And just the impact, the negative impact that that type of bill or regulation could have on our profession is very significant. So that's something that I think everyone is vigilant to address as it comes up. Okay, any other board member comments or questions on this committee item? Okay, seeing none, I will go ahead and take public comment for agenda item 8 here in Sacramento. Seeing none, moderator, can you please open WebEx for public comment on agenda item 8?
And we continue to only have staff members logged in.
Okay, thank you, moderator. So we can go ahead and move on to agenda item 9, the report on the Committee on Professional Conduct, the Enforcement Program Oversight Committee, and the Legislative Committee. First of which will be the Committee on Professional Conduct report given by Vice President Aguilera.
Thank you, President Lotta. 9A1, and this morning's CPC meeting featured robust discussion on these agenda items, starting with CPC item 3, which was discussion and possible action to approve a comment letter regarding the National Association of State Boards of Accountancies, or NASBA's, Private Equity Task Force White Paper titled Alternative Practice Structures and Private Equity, Considerations and Questions for Boards of Accountancy. This request was, the white paper was issued October 24th, 2025. During our meeting, Mr. Franzella noted that both the AICPA and NASBA have task force looking at alternative practice structures and private equity investment. The AICPA released an exposure draft at the end of 2025. So NASBA's was in October, AICPA's was at the end of 2025, that discusses possible changes to the Code of Professional Conduct. This exposure draft is attachment 2 in our materials. It has a comment period that ends April 30th, 2026, and we will be discussing it at our March meeting. Back to the NASBA and its task force, the NASBA Private Equity Task Force, or PE Task Force, was established in early 2025. Mr. Franzella was appointed as one of the members of the PE Task Force. And on October 24th, the PE Task Force released the white paper to educate boards of accountancy and policy makers about both the benefits and challenges of PE investment and raise questions about how to best protect investors and the public interest. The white paper highlights 3 key topic areas that the PE Task Force is requesting input on. These topics include independence and professional standards, disclosure and public understanding, and regulatory oversight and enforcement. Under each of these 3 categories, the white paper poses questions regarding possible regulation of the accounting profession and protection of the public interest. The PE Task Force is seeking feedback from boards of accountancy and other stakeholders in response to the questions included in the white paper. On page 4 of our item, staff provided 3 bullet points that outline the concepts and thoughts that form the responses to the letter. The draft letter with the proposed responses can be found in attachment 3. We did have a very active discussion this morning regarding various aspects of PE-backed APS. Ms. Duong did raise a question regarding the proposed response to the first question in the letter regarding the wording around compensation. Ultimately, the CPC recommends that the CBA approve the proposed comment letter, which is included as attachment 3 of the agenda item. Should edits be necessary, staff recommends that the CBA delegate such edits to staff in consultation with the CBA president to finalize the letter. This is a fully formed motion and a second is not needed. I'll turn it back over to President Lada.
Thank you, Mr. Aguilera. Are there any board member comments or questions on this item? Ms. Dong?
So thank you for that readout. I think I should provide just some comments around that. So I think it's very important that we try to uphold, CPA independence and high professional standards. I think sort of my questions was, sort of to what extent should we have to really look into how they, decide on employee and partner compensation? It seems like it's kind of maybe moving a little bit further into the weeds than we need to, especially for very complex organizational structures like APSs, and there are so many types out there. Is it possible for the board to consider moderating that language? Very strongly addressing that. Yes, we think that CPAs should be the final decision makers when it comes to day-to-day operations, for instance, and with respect to test firms and then also client acceptance and quality control. But when it comes to things like profit sharing, which really sits at the top, I don't know if this CPA should be the last and final decision maker when it comes to that. I don't see the policy reason for it, at least.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the board? Okay. Are there any public comments in Sacramento on this item? Moderator, please open WebEx for public comment on this agenda item.
As before, we have only staff online.
Okay, thank you. All right, Ms. Reed, please take a vote.
Okay, Member Aguilera,
Yes.
Member Batchelor,
Yes.
Member Corrigan,
Yes.
Member Dong,
No.
Member Hines,
Yes.
Member Lotta,
Yes.
Member Lynn,
Yes.
Member Rayful,
Yes.
Member Thompson,
Yes.
Member 2,
Yes.
and Member Zelensky.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you, and thank you, Ms. Dong, for your comments. You raised good points. Moving on to agenda item 9A2. Back to you, Mr. Aguilera.
Before I get on to 9A2, additionally, during our meeting, we requested that the CBA president appoint 2 licensee members to work with staff on the AICPA's Professional Ethics Executive Committee exposure draft regarding proposed revisions to the AICPA Code of Professional Conduct relating to the alternate practice structures. So in other words, help with the comment letter in response to the AICPA's white paper. I volunteered as one of the members to work with staff, and it would be nice if you could, Ms. President, appoint two of us to work with staff. Move on. The next agenda item discussed was CPC item 4, the review and possible approval of 2 CE work group recommendations for inclusion in a future rulemaking package. Specifically, this item relates to the organization of CE learning activities within the regulations and the need for clarifying the distinction between technical ethics and behavioral ethics. The CE work group recommends restructuring CE into 2 categories: formal learning programs so I'll repeat that. The work group recommends restructuring CE into 2 categories, namely the formal learning programs and qualifying learning activities. Formal learning programs are those specifically designed for CE with defined learning goals and objectives, whereas qualifying learning activities are those not designed as CE, but still eligible for CE credit. This CE work group recommendation would improve clarity and create a more evergreen set of regulations that would allow for the inclusion of emerging technologies. Transitioning to the subject area clarification, staff has received feedback from CE providers and CPAs seeking clarification on the distinction between technical ethics and behavioral ethics. The CE work group supports the continued inclusion of ethics in both technical and non-technical courses and recommends clarifying the current regulations regarding behavioral ethics. The CBC recommends the CBA approve the following policy recommendations for inclusion in a future rulemaking package. The first is to create 2 basic categories of CE, formal learning programs and qualifying learning programs, activities. The second recommendation is to clarify behavioral ethics. This is a fully formed motion and a second is not needed. That concludes my report, and I'll return it back to President Lotta.
Thank you, Vice President Aguilera. Are there any member comments or questions on agenda item 9A2? Okay, seeing none, are there any public comments here in Sacramento on this item? Seeing none, moderator, please open WebEx for public comment if there are any public members online.
There are not at this time, just staff.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Ms. Reed, please take the vote.
Member Hines? Yes. Member Lotta?
Yes.
Member Lynn?
Yes.
Member Rayful?
Yes.
Member Thompson?
Yes.
Member 2?
Yes.
Member Zelensky?
Yes.
Member Aguilera?
Yes.
Member Bachelor?
Yes.
Member Corrigan?
Yes.
And Member Dong?
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Before we move on to the next item, I will circle back to Vice President Aguilera's question for a second licensed member to assist in reviewing, was it the white paper?
Yes, the AICPA's white paper, where comment is due April 30th, I think it is.
Okay. Are there any board members who wish to volunteer to assist with that outside of Mr. Aguilera? Thank you, Ms. Thompson, because I will have to appoint someone regardless. We appreciate your additional service. Okay, moving on to, oh, yes, Ms. Corrigan.
Of clarification, I think it's an exposure draft, correct? Yeah.
The AICPA one's an exposure draft. The NASBA one is a white paper, but they're being used fairly interchangeably because of the timing. So, but you are correct.
Thank you for that clarification, Ms. Corrigan. Okay, we'll be moving on to agenda item 9B, report of the Enforcement Program Oversight Committee, which will be presented by the chair, Carrie Ann Farrell-Hines.
Thank you, President Lata. So this morning, the Enforcement Program Oversight Committee met, and the first item that we covered was CBA item 9B1, overview of the enforcement process and the role of the California Board of Accountancy members. Staff presented an overview of the enforcement process, which can be found in full in the attachment, and the role of the CBA members in this process. This overview highlighted the key points in the enforcement process, which begins with the receipt of a complaint and concludes with either closure, citation and fine, or formal discipline. Additionally, staff highlighted that the role of the CBA member is to serve as the decision maker of formal discipline during the enforcement process. The overview concluded with information regarding factors CBA members should consider when making decisions resulting in formal discipline. This was an informational item and no action was taken. It has been requested that this agenda item be presented to the CBA at a future meeting. Moving on to CBA item 9B2, discussion and possible action to approve a modification to the restricted practice term and permanent restricted practice order in the disciplinary guidelines and model orders. The purpose of this item is to provide members an opportunity to offer feedback or approve the proposed changes to the next edition of the disciplinary guidelines and model orders, or known as guidelines. The proposed changes include 1, modifying the language within the permanent restricted practice order term as provided in the underlying text within attachment 1, and 2, modifying the language within the restricted practice term as provided in the underlying text within attachment 2. The EPOC recommends that the CBA approve both changes to the language of the guidelines. This is a fully formed motion and does not require a second. I will turn it back to President Lata for discussion and a vote.
Thank you, Ms. Hines. Are there any board member comments on agenda item 9B? Okay, seeing none. Any public comments here in Sacramento on this item? Seeing none. Moderator, are there any members of the public online?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Ms. Reed, please take the vote.
Member Aguilera,
Yes.
Member Bachelor,
Yes.
Member Corrigan,
Yes.
Member Dong,
Yes.
Member Hines,
Yes.
Member Lotta,
Yes.
Member Lynn,
Yes.
Member Rayful,
Yes.
Member Thompson,
Yes.
Member Tu,
Yes.
and Member Zelensky.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, so now we'll be moving on to agenda item 9C, the report of the Legislative Committee, which will be presented by Secretary Treasurer Bachelor.
Thank you, President Lada. We had an informative legislative committee meeting this morning, and for item number 3 on the agenda, staff presented a review of the California legislative process and the CBA Legislative Committee's role in reviewing, recommending, and promoting legislation related to the consumer protection and practice of accountancy, as well as the CBA staff's role in supporting those activities. An overview of the steps of a bill takes into introduction through the committee process and to the floor in both houses was provided. And the 2026 legislative calendar and positions the CBA might take on legislation were also discussed. Item number 4 on the agenda was a written report containing the status of bills that staff is continuing to monitor during the 2026 legislative session and the deadlines they face should they be revived in this second year of the session. And that concludes my report, quite short. And I hand it back over to President Lada. Thank you.
Secretary Treasurer Bachelor. Okay, do we have any board member comments or questions on the Legislative Committee report? Seeing none, are there any comments from the public here in Sacramento on this item? Seeing none, moderator, are there any members of the public online?
No, there are not.
Okay, thank you. And so that takes us to our agenda item number 10. 10A is agenda items for future California Board of Accountancy meetings. Are there any agenda items from members that they would like to see in a future meeting? Okay, I will now open for public comment. Are there any members of the public here in Sacramento that would like to discuss this item? Seeing none, moderator, are there any members of the public online?
No, there are not.
Okay, thank you for that confirmation. So, since we are moving a bit ahead of schedule, we will also be moving into closed session today to deliberate on closed session matters. Once closed session is completed, the CBA meeting will adjourn for the day, and we will reconvene tomorrow, January 23rd at 9 a.m. to conduct the petition hearings. Thank you.